Hello. Welcome back to Let's Talk Ray Bradbury. If you have not subscribed to our channel, please do. Here on Let's Talk Ray Bradbury, we are working through the collection of these stories of Ray Bradbury. We are up to story number 49 of 100. That is The Leave Taking from 1957. Brief synopsis. A 90-year-old woman goes about her day. She's in the house, efficiently cleaning it. She vacuums. She goes outside, weeds the garden. She bakes pies and lets them cool until the sun goes down. But at the end of the day, she goes upstairs quietly and lays down in her bed, preparing to die. Her family sort of senses this, and they go and they surround her at the bed and plead with her not to go. But she's 90 years old. She's ready. She's ready to die while she still has her wits and while she's, when she's sucked just about every last ounce of joy out of life, but yeah, has yet to decline. So she's in a good place. It's been a life well lived as far as she's concerned, and death will be her first new experience in many, many years. She tells her family not to mourn her. Don't throw some silly funeral like a Halloween party the next day. Just let her go peacefully. And then she reminds them to enjoy life and to, and there's many tasks around the house that will need to be done by others when she's gone, such as shingling the roof in the spring when it needs to be patched, which until recently she'd done herself. But she tells them, nobody should do it who doesn't enjoy the task. And she enjoyed the tasks of domestic life and providing for her family and caring for her family, which is, in our world, has become a little bit outdated, which is strange in many ways. It's almost become an insult to be a housewife, and something she took a lot of pleasure in. But ultimately, she sends them away to go downstairs, and below she hears them, or imagines she hears them as she dies, cleaning, polishing the silver, dusting the halls, and basically living life throughout the halls of the house. Beautifully poetic take on Dying Gracefully by Ray Bradbury. It was kind of hard to convey this story in my description, my synopsis. I think it's a story that's best read, best if you read it yourself. It's hard to sort of boil it down to what it is because it's so poetically written. And, it's not a plot story. It's basically just sort of a really quick character study. And so you basically want to read this story to really appreciate it. But I think I can still share a few thoughts about it. My takeaway is that more and more in our own time, as people are living longer and longer, so too are we clinging to life beyond all joy, out of a fear of death. And people are living longer, and we have old timers in Congress and in big business, for example, running the world in their 80s and 90s, and they're doing it at the expense of younger generations who should be inheriting power or being given the opportunity to gain this power and this wealth and this importance in the world. And yet we have people who are in an advanced age, not that they don't still have something to offer, but they're really controlling the world. And we see this in Congress and in Supreme Court and in big, huge, old companies. And, while these people certainly have a lifetime of knowledge, they aren't necessarily completely able to process what it is that younger generations are going through. And so, I know people who have parents in their 90s and beyond, and they themselves are in their 60s, sometimes older. And there's this feeling that, what the older ones have held on to maybe should have been theirs. And that growing old is great, but you have to grow old gracefully. And more in our world, people are basically clinging to it beyond sense, beyond reason. And one thing that's really much the story remind me of, and this is in closing, is the work of J.R.R. Tolkien. He wrote of the land of Numenor, which was given to faithful men as a gift for their part in the battle against against Morgoth, against Melkor, and they were granted long life. And for a while that was enough, but eventually they came to fear death. They were sort of given a lot of bad information by Melkor or by Sauron, and they came to fear death, and so they would cling to life until they were doddering old fools. And then they even risked doing evil by sailing to the Undying Lands to try and wrench immortality from the Undying, which was impossible because the immortality of the elves was not in the land but in the people. And so they basically destroyed their world in an effort to beat death, and they did it at the expense of their children, who these people had long lifespans, lived several hundred years, and yet you would have their children who were well into adulthood and should have been in their prime, and yet they were waiting for the world to become theirs, rather to be continue to be the servants of doddering old fools who were hell-bent on survival forever. So that's what I took away from it. It's very much a story about dying gracefully, and also taking pleasure in the simple things in life. This woman was a housewife, and as I said before, this is something that is in many circles become almost taboo in our time. Like, it's almost as if people aren't allowed to enjoy home life and to gain value and worth from raising children and grandchildren, and from keeping a nice home, and to making life better for their family. Now it's, for women especially, it feels like there's this pressure, or it sounds like there's this pressure to go out and be high-powered business people, and that's fine. That should be an option, but I also think that it feels like it's almost become passé to be a little bit old-fashioned, and yet we see the world becoming a worse place in some respects because of it, because children are not raised in these caring environments, and they're left unsupervised while both parents go to work. And change must happen in our world, but something is lost when we don't properly compensate for what is lost in those changes. So, all right, guys, thank you for tuning in, and I will see you again soon.